Hi, I want to give you some updates about my science fiction thriller book series called The Event. I just got out of the shower full of inspiration, so you get me today in my natural state, which is pfft. Also, I came out of the shower full of inspiration, and Teresa pointed out that the cat had just puked up all over the carpet, and it was my turn to fix it. So before I could get here, I had to take that inspiration and use it to clean up all this cat vomit. And 2 minutes ago, now I'm here. We'll see where the inspiration is gone, if I still have any. Okay, The Event is the best story idea I have ever had. It's just an amazing, intriguing concept, and I can give it to you right now. It doesn't give anything away. What if everything man-made suddenly vanished from the planet? Boom, gone. And everybody's left there with their knowledge and their experience and their understanding of things, but they don't have any clothes. They don't have any hip replacements. They don't have their fillings anymore. Anything that was fashioned by the hand of man just simply ceased to exist, but not all at once. Instead, it starts at the prime meridian in Greenwich, and it works its way around the globe 1 hour at a time, as if the Earth is rotating past something. Not that it's a plane in space you go through, because it would be on both sides, but it's on one side from the pole to the other pole. And in fact, as it spins, it takes 15 degrees of longitude to have 1 hour, and at the end you've gone 360 degrees, which is 24 hours, and that's the way it works. And so it begins on the summer solstice, right on the line of the prime meridian, which is a steel ribbon that they've put out, stainless steel ribbon, two tones, and kind of a display. And people often like to stand there with 1 foot on either side so they can be in 2 times at the same place. In any event, speaking of the event, which is the title of it, I originally was going to do it as a book. And the more I started writing the chapters of this book, I got up to chapter 6, and they'd started out like normal, and then they got longer and longer and longer as I had more and more details about what's going on each hour as this thing passes by. How are people preparing for it? What's happening in the aftermath after it? How do people respond to that? What's going on the night side of the globe and what's happening? So much stuff to explore. It just kept expanding, okay? And so I realized that this book ultimately might be something like 1,000 or 2,000 pages long by the time I got to the 24th chapter. And I'll be 70 years old next month, and I realized I might not live long enough to finish this book, but the idea and the things that occurred to me about it, best notions I ever had, and it's so intriguing that I just couldn't wait to put it out there to share, and hopefully some people would like it, and I'd get a little feedback as an artist and say, hey, that's really cool. So, I originally published the first 6 chapters as 6 individual books, thin little volumes at the beginning, and then getting longer until they went from a long short story, if that's not an oxymoron, to basically a novelette for each chapter, which is where I am now, and I'm about halfway through writing chapter 7. So at this point, though, I said, well, there's so much that went into this in terms of research. I've researched this areas all over. How could you not with a story like this? More than I've ever researched anything else. And I've learned so many intriguing things that make their way in there in condensed Reader's Digest form, as we used to say, the condensed form. But even though that happens, there's so much other information on the outside, and the thought processes that went in, and the epiphanies that occurred, and how one thing suggested another thing that came to what ended up in the book. All fascinating. As a teacher of writing for a third of a century now. Woo-hoo. Okay. Teaching, writing, storytelling, story structure. I felt what a wonderful opportunity to share the process. So I created a new Facebook page, and that Facebook page is called The Event, a Science Fiction Thriller, and I'll put a link to it down below sometime today, tomorrow, when I get to it. And you'll be able to go right there if you want to read the articles in a journal I decided to keep. Now, I've done the first 6 chapters, so I have to sort of look in the past and say, this is how it happened, as best as I recall, and I think this must have been what inspired me about that. But as I continue, I can tell you exactly where the inspirations come from, exactly why the story turns this way on its own volition, against my will, and I go along with it, kicking and screaming. Okay, the only way that it's going to be ever made public about the wonderful stuff that doesn't get into the series, and there's so much of it, will be if I start keeping this little journal and sharing it. So I'm going to try and publish these things. It turns out that I found the best way to put together this story, which has no single main character. It's a series of scenarios that show what happens in different parts of the world as this line moves across the globe from the North Pole to the South Pole and everything in between. What happens in each hour? And how do countries respond, like Brazil or America, or what's going on in England where it began, on the small strip of England that remains to the east side of the prime meridian, and all the stuff on the west where people were taken unawares with no warning, versus the people, for example, in Japan who wake up to hear about all this and they have a bunch of hours to try and prepare. Even though they know they can't save anything that's man-made, they've got to gather things that will help them survive that aren't man-made, crops that are not GMO crops, and all kinds of things. It's really, okay, you get my enthusiasm. So I'll put the link down there and you can see it, and then I'll be doing regular updates. And I also have a friend of a friend who is a professional narrator, and he has done the first 6 chapters professionally. I've taken that audiobook and put it right here on my YouTube channel. There'll be a link down below to that too. It's a professional reading of The Event, a science fiction thriller, and it has its own playlist. And then I've also started doing readings myself, just because I want to put in that author's spin, as opposed to how a professional would say it. Very well, but not what I exactly had in mind. So I'm going to do the story god. Anyway, I've been doing my own. I've done the first 2 chapters, and those are now in there in a separate playlist. I'll put a link to that too. Anyway, The Event, the most wonderful idea I've ever had in 69 years. It's a long pathway, and once the first story is finished, I call the first story Man-Made, because that's what's going on. And so it's Man-Made Book 1, Man-Made Book 2, Man-Made Book 3, and it comes through. When I get to 24, I'll try to see if I can fit them into a single book with the limitations of publishing on, say, Amazon self-publishing. How long can something be before they say, nope, can't do that anymore? I think Kindle books don't have a limit, but paperbacks do, so we'll find out what that is. But after I finish that, there's a second book planned called Man Unmade, and then a third book in the trilogy called Man Remade. Okay, and what's behind all this is a really interesting concept that you'll find out at the end of the first book. And then there's some really cool appendices, like suggestions for a soundtrack from the interns who worked on the report in the fictional world that is the book. You'll find out. Okay, so anyway, then after that, there's lots of things I missed. So I'm thinking I could write The Event city by city, or state by state, or country by country, and deal with it, or take another whip around the globe as this is what it was like in these places we didn't touch last time and what happened. So it's part travelogue, part science, explaining how all kinds of interesting things work and theories going on, part science fiction thriller, and all fun on the shoulders of an intriguing idea. That's it, I guess. I just wanted to let you know what's going on, kind of an update of what's occupying my attention this week, which is the week of Monday, January 23rd, 2023. And this is what I'm all about at the moment. So with that, I'll leave you to go on to whatever else you're doing and check out the links down below so that you can actually go read the book on Amazon, or you can see the audiobook for free, listen to the audio. If you don't want to see an audiobook, listen to the audiobook for free, or my version of it. Also, I'm publishing sections of it on the Facebook page, so you can read it in text, but horrible format for doing that kind of thing for long sections. Anyway, every chapter's made up of several episodes, and so there's right now in 6 books about 90 some odd episodes, almost 100, and so I'm doing them 1 episode at a time, and this week is episode 1. So there you go. Thanks for noticing me. Hope you enjoy the story. Bye-bye.